and I'm here with
DANK.
And we're here on the front lines in the battle against the deep state, the cabal, the Illuminadonkeys, and all those that wish to enslave all of humanity for their own selfish reasons. How's it going, Tank?
Always going okay. You know, I always dread Fridays that we haven't broken through, which is basically going to be Friday for the past 5 years of my life. So, you know, but I can't complain. You know what? I'm grateful. I'm happy. You know, we're winning. You know, it's a long battle against boredom. You know, as the cabal fights to bore us all to death with infinite tactics of absolutely nothing. Just, you know, wearing out the resources and continuing to show their lack of imagination and creativity and pursuing war and, you know, false rhetoric. So, you know, I'm a little worn out with all that at the moment, but I mean, not worn out, it's just kind of, it's boring, you know, it's boring. So, but I can't complain. I have no update from Kim, you know, other than I did get some information from a back channel through this woman who's running for Senate against Chuck Schumer. Her name is LaRouche. She is connected to some PAC, and she gave us some information about I guess the Federal Reserve dumping $127 billion every night, you know, and this being part of blah blah blah.
Well,
of which I
let me just ask you. So, what is the first name?
What is the for? Oh, I'm not sure actually.
It's not. It's not Lyndon LaRouche, is it?
I don't know.
Because that's a kind of more of a. It's kind of like I don't even say like a you know a group, just kind of like a Ron Paul group. You know, back in the day where they were trying to basically get, you know, he was Lyndon LaRouche was running for president. You know, it was kind of like an alternative party or like a Ross Perot type event. You know, but they always, you know, went against Lyndon LaRouche. So I don't know if they're running for Senate. You know, but you know, Lyndon kind of sounds like Linda. So that's why I was wondering if it was the same.
Yeah. Oh yeah, it's the same one. Just
yeah. Well, I mean, just you know, just a little mistake on you know the gender there, and because you know they're the ones. If you remember, they went up and OAC was speaking at some event, and this woman came up and talked about you know eating the baby, eating the children. Remember that?
Oh yes. That is the same one. That is the same one. They actually referenced that to me.
That's Lyndon LaRouche. That's that's their organization. So that's so if they're running for you know senator or something like that, that would be kind of interesting. Yeah. So they're activist you know group, right? I would say more on the far right than the far left, but so of things. More, I guess, but I shouldn't talk too much because I really don't know too much about them. But I do know that they are kind of like they try to start their own political party, and you know they made some major efforts over the last decades, right? So, but they're still moving. Still, things are happening with them.
Yes. So I guess it's actually it's Diane of the LaRouche PAC. So okay. I guess that is probably the same PAC. Yeah.
Okay.
But you know, it's so interesting to me because it just seems like every time I talk to people, most people are tied to something that is not really panning out, that's not real. You know, most people are tied back to either, you know, trying to get their birth certificate bound.
Dexter!
They're really preaching that on the common, you know, law in this guy, Paul Devine, who is actually, you know, mapping things out for people, but then there's more to the story, right? That all those accounts have been drained. So so even if you have the lawful right, there's nothing there. What are you gonna do? You know, and that so you have people chasing after these, you know, false leaders everywhere. So even when they're, you know, kind of in principle on your side about something, if they're convinced one way is going to work, you know, which is what's been happening now for years, is that everybody's convinced they've figured out the system and that, you know, this is where the money is. But at the end of the day, it's like everybody needs money to be in this fight, right? And now everything that everyone pursues, you know, it's just because you have somebody who's new pursuing the same thing that's already failed, and they think they've gamed the system or whatever. It's like everybody's kind of wrapped up one way or another with one principle that just will not pan out in the end. So, it's kind of important to bring them over to, the light side, the challenge that we're constantly facing, because everybody thinks they've done all the research, they know, they've pulled every document there is and done all this stuff, and it's like, well, there's just always another level, pretty much. I mean, as much as we know and have shared publicly, I am very aware that, like, there's so much that I don't know, So.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a lot. I was kind of listening to Thomas on catching some of his pieces and snippets, and so it's always like, oh, okay, well, I didn't know that. Yeah. So hey, you got some any news coming from Kim or even from Thomas?
I don't have. I mean, other than Kim just telling me that the Federal Reserve was not dumping any money because they have no money. That was the only update that I had from her. And what the last she told me was that we're not waiting on them, which doesn't fully make sense at the moment because I'm not really sure what we'd be waiting on them. But she did say that in reference to the Bank of England, that the Rothschild, for the most part, the reason why they're trying to figure out what to do with the Kim system is because they're just now seeing it for the first time, right? They're just realizing they're acknowledging its existence, and now the Rothschilds are permitting them to use it or to see it and to use it. So I told her immediately, I'm like, I don't. Anytime I hear that we're waiting on permission from the Rothschilds to do anything, I immediately am like, no, that can't be the end. we don't get through with all this, and then now we get to ask the Rothschilds for permission. In reality, it's like, these are criminals, on the worst possible, stance if you really think about it, because they've committed horrible acts crimes against humanity, repeatedly, knowingly. I don't see how, I don't see victory being something where we're asking them for permission. So that's the only real update I have there. And then Thomas was talking about how that essentially you have everything being shut down, around the world. Everything is in a lockdown. So there's a standoff, which I would imagine basically what you've got happen this week is, the world coming to the reality of like, wow, we can't do anything. That's why you had the Senate, step up, and they basically, they had 3 days of filibustering planned, which went nowhere, and was shut down immediately because there's no money, and there's some tie into that is very, very real, where if the intelligence system is now transparent and the financial system is now transparent to a level where you can't hide that, there was a bribe, the fix was in on the Senate. Can't hide it, So, I don't know. So that's basically what I'm seeing happen now. I just think it takes people different things to really register that it's real and it's really happening. And so now you're seeing all this stuff unfold in front of us. And Thomas was talking about saying, everybody shut down. They're all waiting. They're all trying to do one thing or another. And then everybody's coming out of the woodworks. Anna von Reitz comes out and she's trying to persuade people that, that Kim was banned by the Kingdom of Manna after the Kingdom of Manna had put her in her position. It's like the Kingdom of Manna wouldn't even exist if it wasn't for Kim.
No.
She talks about Kim, them setting up the legacy of trust of, the Manna World Holding Trust. And Kim named the already existing quantum system, which is registered as the unknown country, or, but it's been registered by many names. And to be honest, the name doesn't even matter. There's no place it's registered as the Manna World Holding Trust isn't registered anywhere now. And the Kingdom of Manna isn't even a kingdom, right? I mean, at least no more than, you are at your house in the Philippines. The Kingdom of Dan. I mean, which, I can give you that.
What are you trying to tell me here?
I'm just saying you're the master of your domain.
Yeah,
That's yours, right?
Yeah, okay.
It's not eminent domain of every place on the planet.
Yeah.
So
Yes, but if I have everybody register to me.
Right. Which it all makes sense now, right? They went around the world and they tried to register all of the indigenous people, thinking that they could persuade and sway the quantum system because they had all of these indigenous people registered, like something like that, right? Like the whole sham of this is, to me, is just it's nauseating. It's just the point. It's like, all of these people in front of them. So Annabelle Rice comes out, and then Team Bubba was trying to run us down, and we have people everywhere, so we get all their information. And, I mean, they're not even a factor. I'm not worried about that. But so we took the time to last night. We were taking the time to just put together information so that anybody could see very clearly. Like, look, anything that anyone's saying against us, right? Like, for example, Michelle Walker's being attacked by Kathy Hall. Well, I know that whoever this version is of Kathy Hall has it out for Michelle, and she's putting out fraudulent information, right? She attacks her for something Michelle said back in June, which panned out all to be true, where she said that Linda Collins Smith was working with Child Protective Services and that she was going to reveal information on Hillary Clinton to bring down the Clinton Foundation. Like, this was known. I mean, she brought out other information about her husband, the judge, being a pedophile, right, and recording information on her home laptop. We brought all that out. Kathy Hall is compromised someone there, so she didn't want that brought out. Michelle just mentioned she spoke to Kathy Hall. She didn't say they were friends or anything else. She mentioned that Lynn Collins Smith was in the same fight, and then Kathy Hall and this other asset, this other person, Gage Clark, right? So Gage Clark, has admitted, and we have all the text messages and evidence to prove this. Gage Clark was running a psyops, right? And she said so. We have it in the actual messages. So we put all that stuff out because whenever people try to go after our credibility, right? Most of the time, I could care less. But because right now is such a big transitional moment, right? And it's like, look, we need people to know that we do everything, with the best intentions always. I'm sure we'll make mistakes, but we also document everything and do things the right way. So if we say something, it's true, right? And if it's not true, it's because we got bad information, and we'll come out and say that too.
Right.
But so so Sonora and I, we pulled together, the different resources, and Michelle has given us all her 50,000 screenshots of everything that anyone's ever said to her about anything. So, because I'll tell you, Michelle Walker is the wrong person to run your mouth about and try to create a lie about. She's got everything you can imagine. She still has the documents, and she knows right where it is. So that people are coming out and, one on top of another trying to say, oh, she's a fraud. What fraud? What is the grand fraud we're running? The poverty scheme that we're running? Like, ha ha ha, we're showing all of you. We're staying poor. We'll teach you a lesson. We would be, my team would be the world's worst scam team in history.
Yeah. I think you've stumbled upon with our ultimate scheme there, just to make sure that we all remain poor. Well, certainly,
Yeah.
while trying to get everything straightened out, in a system that wants to prevent you from having money. That's one of the things that I picked up from Thomas, was that there was a no compete system, right? Where
right.
And I always felt that I've said it, but not in those words. Is that there was some sort of ceiling, and if you became too successful, things would happen that would be so unusual, right, that you would be taken out, right? Your business would fall or whatever, because you just can't get successful if you're not in with who they are.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. I mean, it's there's actually financial, set points, right, in the cabal or in the deep state or whatever the order, that you can't go above a certain point without being in their club, right?
Right.
That's why you have stories of all types of stories over time, right? Where you have these people that hit it big, right? They hit it big, then they started investing in things that were sound investments, right? Things that were smart moves if you based it on historical fact.
Right.
Or what you thought was real, right? So they would make investments, all of a sudden investments would go down, in my group, right, in my extended group, the guy who actually, the first guy to ever sell oil futures, right? Which you think this guy would be, gazillionaire, right?
Right.
Sold oil futures, genius. Well, they allowed him to do it. I think he made like $50 million, right? So pretty much anybody is going to be able to survive and get by with $50 million for the rest of their life, right? Mm-hmm. And they basically the IRS came in and seized all of their oil fields, right? And then they mined the heck out of them, right? Used them. Now they're trying to sell the oil fields back to them. Now that they've tapped all the oil out, right?
Right.
But that's one example. But I have, just in my network, I have probably 100 examples of people who had revolutionary ideas, did something great, got recognized, went big. The owner saw it as a threat, they took them out, right? And they wouldn't cooperate with their agenda. It's unfortunate, but just habitually, I always look to see how well people are doing financially, to see, it's one of the first things I look at, which is, this is a horrible business model. I'm just saying it's just habit. And it's proven out over time to be true. Like, if people have a lot of money, like, they're almost always compromised, right? Or some significant part of what they're doing is wrong, right? Even if they are personally not compromising,
right?
They've done anything wrong,
right?
So
yeah, they're a great guy that promotes porn sites for children.
Oh, that's a little bit more like, there's these like cash checking facilities, where you go in and like you can cash your check for your paycheck, right?
Sure.
So I can't remember the name of the guy, but good guy, right? He was city councilman down in Florida, right? Really working to do some good, right? Wasn't part of their grand pedophile network of things, right? But so he sells his company, right? It turns out to be, or he's getting ready to sell it. It ends up being like 100 times more valuable than what he thought, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so he ends up selling like a huge profit, right? And so then for a little while there, he was trying to help us kind of bring some money in and bring some banks in, right? And inevitably, by the time he traces back, it always comes back to the same characters trying to do the same thing, right? And it's the same group that was trying to buy, that was working with the Kingdom of Manna, trying to buy banks all over the world, right? But it always traces back. By the time you get to the top of where it is and where the issue is, it always comes back to something like that. And so even the good guys are like, they end up getting compromised. And then what will happen is, as they're working with us, once we figure out who they're connected to and we tell them, they have a choice to make, right? Either this person that they've done business with several times, who's made them a lot of money, or us, who's telling them that person's a fraud. So it's we haven't won that battle many times.
Yep. I get it. So I've seen my even in two businesses where I got to a certain point and it seemed like, gee, what's going on here? Something very odd is at play here. One of them, I was literally expanding to many magazines. There, I had this. I was selling computer equipment, anything related to computers, different niches, desktop video, 3D animation, and I had this model that I would basically buy bulk pages in the magazines, and then I would divide it up and sell it at a profit to for manufacturers of the products that I was selling. Then I would accept product in exchange for those sites, for those pages that they were running with me. So I made money on the advertising. I was able to get a lot of the manufacturers to pay because it was like their cost was even much less because, of course, their product cost is less. right, than what they're
sure.
selling for. So it was a great model. I kept expanding. I was even one magazine I would run, like, I think my biggest ad was 24 pages or something like that out of a magazine.
Wow.
And
Yeah.
and then I was expanding into some of the big ones, the bigger, ones, like Computer Shopper, right? It's a huge, like, tabloid size, one. And shortly after that, the magazines that I was doing, my main bulk business was purchased, right, by just another magazine out of the blue, and then 6 months later was shut down. And so it was kind of like, why would you buy a magazine to shut it down, right? And I didn't think it was had anything to do with me, really, right? But later, there was some other information that came about from I ended up talking with the owner of the magazine at some event, like, many years later, right? And he had to fight to put in a clause to basically say that magazine would be in operation, right? He had to, because they said they didn't want anything in there. They were probably going to shut it down the next day. But he said it was very odd, and he was doing okay, but they'd offered him so much more for the magazine. Then he said if he had worked for 10 years, the magazine wouldn't have been worth that much. That's why he took it.
Right.
And he
Right.
also wasn't allowed to start another one.
Right. Of course. Right. Yeah.
So that kind of thing, it's kind of it's a bit odd. There was also a distributor, a major distributor for products, right? That seemed like they went in competition with me on purpose. Like they set up to literally go after me, and every niche that I went after, that they were going after, and they had really deep products. CompUSA?
Yeah. Of course.
They still around?
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah, they're owned by a massive distributor of products, right? And so they were literally set up to start, but they had an online division that is not the same name, but it was the same people, right? So anyway, that it was that online division that basically. So at the time, I don't think that I wasn't thinking that I was targeted, right? But then,
Right.
but
No,
now,
well, that's what they do to all of us. Yeah. Yeah.
so then I just look back, because I was really dominating, right? I really was. I mean, everything I turned my attention to, and I was ahead of the game, like far ahead. Like I kind of like knew where the market was going before everyone else, and so I was already laying groundwork and roots and establishing all sorts of relationships, and then it got to that point, and then now, yeah, I just thought, well, it's just competition, and move on to the next thing, and I did, right? But when you start to look back and say, was there something actually? Was there anything else that was kind of like on the horizon that was basically saying, was I offered entry into a club, for example, that I declined, things like that. And I said, is there any relationship between the two? Those kind of things.
Of course. I mean, what's so fascinating, actually, looking at it from a purely business, supply and demand, profitability standpoint, the deep state has made nothing but horrible business decisions for at least the past 10 years, right?
Yeah.
Because, and they've done it intentionally. Now, I'll give you an example, and this really kind of paints the picture, right? Kim went out early on when she took this position, right? And she made deals with countries all over the world that were in clear need, right? Now, just think about it. If you had the ability to go in and say, look, I'll give you grant money. This is what we're always, dreaming about, talking about. I'll give you grant money. It's money you don't have to pay back. Inevitably, what happens is you will own assets, right? So now you own assets and you have no debt. it's almost impossible not to be profitable, right?
Right.
So she went and she set up contracts all over the place. I mean, all over Africa and all over the world, right? And in Africa, because she was building a road for a long time, because there's no road to get from, Africa to like, the Middle East, or which there should be, right?
Yeah.
So she was building these roads, and there was like the IMF would come in with their mercenaries and like be killing off the workers, right? But she made contracts with things like there's countries that would have like one ambulance in the whole country, right? So there's an obvious need, right, for frames, right? Because they didn't have the metal to build these big frames, the manufacturing plants, right? So she'd come back, with a deal to basically completely revitalize the entire auto industry, right? Met with Ford, GM, a bunch of major auto manufacturers here in the U.S. She sat down with them and she said, "Look, I have all of these contracts. We'll pay for everything. They're signed, sealed, delivered. We'll revitalize the entire American economy." And they sat there with her like, "No, that's not possible. That doesn't exist," or "No, it's not. That's not real." They refused to cooperate, right? Now, whether that was them playing dumb or they are dumb, I don't know, But they basically wouldn't accept the deals, which would have completely revitalized the American economy, because there's all across Africa, you could have been building like these frames, right? Manufacturing these frames for all the, to build ambulances and school buses and all types of things like that, and they wouldn't accept the deals. And think about it, it's no risk. They didn't have to find the market. But no pour, billions of dollars into, garbage advertising and things like that, to maintain the illusion that why they're struggling. But it's just horrible business decision, because part of their model was to demolish the American economy and thus the world economy, so they could buy everything back for pennies on the dollar. So they were hedging their bet, and they were destroying every business that had the potential to be profitable for long term, right? Anything that was decent. So, anything that changed the model from what they were doing. And that's all they knew. All they knew was just, to bully and, bury innovation and everything else. So, it's crazy. It's crazy to me.
Yeah, I get it. I kind of came upon that as well when I was working in Africa with Mozambique to develop their natural resources, and we had this plan, and so we were kind of like, just like proposing like this is what can be done, kind of thing, because it was so underdeveloped. They had so many resources. Yep. They had natural gas. They also they had a lot of other mineral deposits. There was even one concession that I was really interested. It was titanium sands. So it was the sand itself was very rich in titanium, but it was also rich in iron and other elements that were actually important into producing titanium. And titanium is expensive metal, but one of the reasons why it's expensive is because you've got to like bring all these elements together, and it also takes a lot of energy. Well, we actually were part of this deal was there was literally a natural gas concession along with the titanium sands, which were really close to one another. In fact, I actually said, this one over here, let's develop this one, right? This particular area for natural gas that would feed a plant that we would make for making the titanium. So the cost of actually production of the titanium would be very small comparatively, because you don't have to ship everything, bring everything together, right? And then use a lot of energy to produce it, because everything was already there, and the energy was there. So literally, could have actually there was enough titanium there to like supply for like a couple hundred years. Maybe I think it was like 300 years or 400 years worth of like of the world's titanium supply could have been covered. Right?
Wow. Yeah.
But there was no roads, and so one of the main things we had to start with was building a railway and a road at the same time. So it was kind of one of those things. Like, it's interesting. They don't have any roads, and obviously there's roads, but they didn't have like a highway system, a freeway system that would you know
Yeah.
mill
They,
itself.
they isolate the world's resources, right? They have, they do things like nature preserves. They herd us into the cities so we're easy to kill, and they preserve nature but not humanity. They
Preserve the
but,
resources.
it's amazing. One of the project owners in our network, right? They have this incredible pavement, right? And the pavement uses like 80% of just whatever the earth is right there, right underneath the pavement. It binds together, and it creates a pavement that is 8 times stronger than any pavement currently being used in the United States, right? And it's more organic and natural with the planet, so it absorbs more of the the rays from the sun that would reflect back and basically leave radiation kind of floating on the surface, I guess, and it absorbs more of that naturally, right, into the earth. It's stronger, and it would completely renovate the entire infrastructure of the whole country just by introducing this one idea, right? And all the construction companies would benefit. Everybody on the lower levels, it would be less expensive in materials significantly than all of the other pavements out there. And you have something like this that exists, right? And you just have to wonder sometimes, like, if you were looking at this from the justification standpoint of why this keeps happening, it's like, why wouldn't that be already being used? We could easily, rebuild the entire infrastructure, and I know that there's, this is covered in the trust, right? This money, when Trump's talking about the trillions of dollars laid up for infrastructure, these are things that are easily built, easily. But they make, really awful, horribly greedy decisions, right? But in part because the people that are doing this work, they're giving up 80% of what they're making to the Rothschilds. The military industrialized complex, right?
Mm-hmm.
You overcharge and you drive up the prices on everything. They take everything.
Right.
Right. And so the person who's actually doing the work, they're dealing with, a fraction, a fifth of what they would actually be able to work with, right?
Right.
And that's their profit, their costs, that's everything in encompassed. And and that's because they've had complete dominance over the system. So now if that is removed by itself, like just that piece, so now we don't have that military industrialized system anymore, right? Overcharging and constantly waging war. If you take that out, like, God, there's so much more wealth really available for everyone, right? We can do so much more. And it's a no-brainer. It's not even a question if you were to look at it from like a global planning standpoint and say, look, let's look at what we actually have here. And unfortunately, we still have this element that everyone kind of bows to who's used to being in control. And, even the people that are like aware of what's going on, they're still, I think they're just struggling to believe that things can change.
Right. Well, the people don't know how, right? So they haven't been wandering in the desert for 40 years.
Right. Right. Haven't had a proving ground, right?
Yeah, they don't know how to act, right? So, they just go by what they know. People do, once old habits die hard.
Yep.
So you got to give
old habits do die hard.
If retraining is necessary, they need to go to re-education camps. Take the socialists and turn them into capitalists, like they did to Bernie.
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
He's a millionaire, right?
Yeah. All these things are just, but this whole thing of allowing and permitting these groups to have this authority over us, it has to end. It's such a massive undertaking. Like right now, I feel it because the group that we were originally trying to connect with, the National Assembly, right? They finally reached out to me today, and so I spoke to them, and they have they've had a lot of success up in Michigan, right? They basically have a de jure common law government running side by side next to the de facto government, and they are formidable, right? They're respected and it's known, right? Now, they have the system that, what we're working with, and they just haven't been able to kind of get it to catch on, right? And they were concerned that they were telling me, like, you're on the right track, but, like, it's very dangerous, right? Which I kind of laugh at. I'm like, yes, I'm aware. Like, I know it's dangerous. I regularly get death threats and horrifying pictures from things that try to scare me. And, I'm very used to that treatment, right? Like, I get it. Yes, it's dangerous. There's risks every day. But the risk of not doing it is so much greater, right? The risk of not changing this means I can guarantee you, there will be genocide, right? I can guarantee you that the world that is created if we do nothing is 1,000 times worse than anything that we have to lose or to the injuries we take or whatever the losses we take if we fight. That's the reality. So doing nothing is no longer an option, and getting that through to people in a way that they realize that means you. You know what I mean? Like, this is your fight. It's just
well, let the government do it.
Yeah, right. And then even with these groups, then here's what happens: they put people in place to make it look like they're fighting, right? So now they're just controlling both sides of the narrative anyway.
Right.
And that's what I'm dealing with here in New York. You've got these great, all-around good guys with Del Bigtree and Bobby Kennedy, and look how they're fighting for the vaccines. They point out all the wrongdoings, right? And then they're like, if we could just do one more study, does anyone really think that the issue is that the governing bodies don't know what the vaccines are doing? There's this guy out there who I don't even know who it was. He clearly had some influence, right? And he had his job. I don't know what it was, but I just caught some clips of it. He was talking about going in and identifying that these studies that were being done by doctors, like to manipulate children's behavior and using electroshock therapy and then implanting wires, and he shut that down. And then finally, after years and years and years, he got the courts to admit that electroshock therapy was bad. He said, and the judge said, okay, we'll have a trial on it. The next day, the FDA came out and permitted it, and made electroshock therapy a normal treatment.
Wow.
Like, imagine, the next day, that's just what happened.
Hurry! We gotta nip this in the bud, otherwise we're gonna lose electroshock therapy to.
Right. Whatever way they can manipulate us. Their biggest fear is our success. Their biggest fear is us just expanding to realize the unlimited potential of the human heart and mind working in combination and collectively with others, because that is a force that cannot be stopped. And it's amazing, even realizing the threat, because you got to think, like, if they're using things like the Looking Glass, right? Some version of that, some mapping, technology that allows them to at least anticipate. They've got to realize that by continuing down this path of trying to suppress us, that at some point, the kind nature, the natural innate benevolence of humanity, which is the natural state of humanity. Humanity naturally will help each other, will naturally teach, will naturally give, will naturally kind. No matter what anybody says, that is the natural state of humanity. If we were just raised unadulterated, that's how we'd be. You could see it every day. You watch any kids together. I remember watching, my 2-year-old nephew sitting there teaching my 1-year-old twin son, how to do something, right? Teach him how to drink out of a sippy cup or something. And it is how nurturing they were, just naturally. And I've seen it 1,000 times, right?
Yeah.
It's what comes naturally. We all feel better when we're helping other people. We just do. Even people that you don't like, they feel more purposeful, more driven, happier when they're able to contribute to make the world around them better and to make those around them better. It's just natural. Now, if we were just able to embrace that in totality and just let go of our fear and our preconceived notions based on programming and training on a broken world and able to just pursue excellence, right, with just kind of reckless abandon without the concern of, our fear of consequences, there's nothing they could stop. And that is their biggest fear. So our biggest weapon, we're already holding on to it. It's their biggest fear, and the biggest challenge is overcoming our belief that it's true.
Yep. Well, but they actually say, well, that's what they're trying to wipe out, right? It's that loving, caring, right? And so that's their whole motivation is to wipe it out, because it's a weakness.
Yep. Right. I mean, it's amazing, because people that had some financial success, who've been able to maintain any kind of financial independence, they're always trying to tell you when you have a new idea, they're always trying to tell you it doesn't work that way, right? It doesn't matter what it is, right? Like right now, we're going through the Constitution, and I've been talking to different lawyers who are in the fight, right? They're like, well, it doesn't work that way. Or that'd be a very modern interpretation, or a very progressive interpretation. It's like, actually, it's a very accurate interpretation of language that you really can't even argue about, right? Like, the Constitution puts things in very simplified terms. But because that hasn't been the norm, right, to respect the law of the land, because money, and the civil courts have dominated decisions over, practical, like the actual preservation of humanity, of actually being concerned about human health care. Like, do we actually care about human health? And all they care about is the management of the asset, right? Yeah. Like, they want us to live a certain period of time, not more or less, right? So they can manage the asset.
Right. You live too long, you're cutting into their profits.
Right, exactly. So that's why the language is so poetic, really, when you hear people speak in these incredible, majestic terms about the Constitution. I mean, you read the Declaration of Independence, the language is so powerful and so strong, and you realize people don't talk that way anymore.
Right.
They don't say those kind of things and believe it because the system has suppressed them so much, right? So they wouldn't dream of saying that unless they're just, selling something else. Part of the reason why I think Trump is so really, moving things, because he is coming back to that, focused on common law. He is focused on, actually coming back to the people.
Right.
Whereas, and it's not just words. He puts things in place all the time to support the people. And whereas the previous administrations, for a long time, they did not. They were just, human in name only. So.
Well, his plain speaking, right? It's like, he said all this was bullshit. Right? And that kind of like, now, when he said it originally on this on the original video, it's there. But if you see on the news, they bleep it out, right? Oh, he said something bad, right?
Right.
I mean, he got to use some more heavier words than that, but he's right, and everyone that heard it, says, yeah, it is, and it's an agreement, yeah. Right? So it's a plainly spoken. It's not, he's not putting himself also up as better than everyone else. Like Nancy Pelosi is like, they talk about him being the king, and that she's really acting like a queen, right? This is in her head. She's royalty.
But you can tell they're absolutely just disgusted, flabbergasted at the notion that, how dare this peasant try to stand in these courts, because they think they're that, that important, and it's interesting because you'll see from time to time where these, like different journalists who are journalists or just whatever public figures on some level, right? And they'll go in and they're, publicly mocking the Trump followers, right, or the Trump supporters, right, that are, and they'll mock them as being, this redneck, rube, dumbass crowd, blah blah blah. I mean, they won't say those words, but they might as well. You know, they'll say things as if, you know, the general mentality of the conservative is so lowbrow, right? It's so beneath them that they're showing. It's like it shows just how filled with contempt they are for life, for people, and they think they're so much better than this. And for the most part, our society has been trained that when people talk to us that way, we don't usually defend ourselves. We don't stand up for what we're saying. We don't try to look for, no, what you're saying is actually of lower intelligence, right? Just because you're using big words doesn't make what you're saying more powerful, impactful, or true, right? But because you're using that and you're talking down to me, our natural slave mentality often kicks in. This is what usually happens, and this is what they're counting on. If I keep talking down to you, you'll think you're beneath me, right? And that's what they do, right? And what's happening now, what Trump is really upset, is he's activated this part of everyone where they're like, no, screw you. I'm no less than you. And I refuse to act like I am. You know, and that is the thing they are so angry about. That's why they just keep talking down to people, expecting us all to just bow down and look for. They always say things like how ridiculous Trump is. Like Pelosi tried to say how that speech was filled with lies. No, it wasn't. The things that Trump said, those were all actual statistics, and he very carefully worded them, right?
Right.
He said things like, these are the best numbers ever recorded, right? This is the best time, he didn't say in history, he said ever recorded. And it was different things, because he's right. Like, based on, you know, quantitative data that he's told, like, he's right.
Right. Yeah,
So,
he's using the system, and he's basically presenting the very best case, and he's pumping it filled with money, right? So and making sure that it goes into the hands of the middle class, and this is what is I wouldn't be surprised if he doesn't double everyone's salary by the end of his second term. Everyone has twice as much money, and that would just be a start, towards getting to equalize where things are. But it's these things are changing, right? But people are seeing it. I was just watching this C-SPAN, these people that were commenting after the State of the Union, and all of them were so upset with the Democrats and saying, I voted for Hillary last time, I'm never going to vote for any Democrat ever again. Right?
wow.
And I think that there's at least a good 10% of all of the Democrats that flipped that night.
I'll tell you what. I mean, because I don't think they were standing when like the 100-year-old Tuskegee Airman was there, right?
Yeah.
Or
his son, or his great grandson, who wants to be in the Space
That whole
Force.
thing was like, Trump, he is a showman, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I refuse to take away from what he was doing and try to chalk it up to him just being a showboat, right?
Right.
He's a showman, but that guy loves people, right? He helps people all the time, like out of his own pocket. He does it all the time, and nobody knows about it. And I know that for a fact.
Yeah.
Like, he will just, like, for example, that little girl, nobody's talking about this, but my sources tell me, like, we talk about that little girl who got up and she got a scholarship.
Mm-hmm.
They referred to her. My sources tell me, when he said, a scholarship has come available. Now, he didn't say this, right? But he could have. I'm pretty sure he put up the money himself.
Yeah.
Now, he didn't say that, though, right?
No.
Like, he wasn't trying to make it about him. He was trying to make it about that girl in that moment, letting her know you could go do anything.
Right.
And if that's the show that he's putting on, he coupled it by turning right around, looking to the losers in Congress there, and you saw him. He tilted his shoulder back, swayed back. He said, I'm asking Congress to support 1 million more scholarships like this by passing this bill. So he backed it up right away.
Yeah.
With real evidence. But look, You can do this. And he's showing the folly of their ways, right? What is, at the end of that speech, you know, I was saying to myself, is what exactly are you guys fighting for? Because all these things are happening, right? Now, other than you just think it's a lie, but it's not a lie. You know, the only place where their broken mentality could even work is if you're buried in one of these cities that they've created, these sanctuary cities that are demolished, where there's no sense of, you know, any American values whatsoever, and they've run them into the ground. The poverty is, you know, tripled, right? They're intentionally allowing them to be run into the ground, and on any level, that is messed up. Because even if it was a political move, it's horrible because people should not have to suffer for you to play games in politics, right? And if that's your intention, it's like how can you justify this as the way of the future? You know, I was talking to some parents the other day here in New York who would have been, you know, more liberal generally, right? And obviously, I don't bring up any politics to anybody, right? But everybody knows I'm involved in something. They just can't quite put the finger on it, right? So, but they started talking to me about how, you know, they're fighting tickets, paying all this money for different things, right? Insurance. And it said, but you can go down to the Department of Motor Vehicles as an illegal alien in New York with basically like, you know, a birth certificate from Guatemala. And from what I understand, I haven't confirmed this, but that you don't need to do a driver's test or anything else, and you just walk in and get a driver's license.
Yeah.
As an illegal alien.
Yeah.
Now, what would be to stop anybody from doing that?
Right.
Like, why couldn't I just now? And not only that, but there is the catch and release system that they had at the border that Trump was talking about that he broke up.
Yeah.
Well, here in New York, you have people with multiple felonies. I mean, there was over 7,000 people with multiple felonies that ICE literally dictated to the mayor here and to say to hold them. They were in custody and they released them. So if you want to get off a crime, you just say you're an illegal alien, basically, and you can leave.
Yeah.
So now that's clearly a system that you're promoting violence. And,
Right.
you know,
Well, they now just started this New Way Forward Act. But did you pick up on this?
no. Oh wait, I did see something about it, but tell me.
So it's basically it's legalizing, everyone who was an illegal alien, and if you're deported, right, the ICE has to buy you a plane ticket to come back. If you were ever, and they can never use any crime that you've committed as a reason to deport you. Ever. Even
like, how does that work?
and retroactive. If you were already deported, the ICE has to go and bring you back.
That is the most ridiculous thing I have ever
It
heard.
is. It is absolutely ridiculous. But this is how crazy these people are, right? That they want to go ahead and make sure to bring in the criminals. It's their goal, stated goal, to keep the criminals, right? And
You know, that really speaks to that you have this massive slave mentality out there.
yeah,
Right, where you have the slave owner comes in, right, and you know you don't want to break up the family, so you downplay all the abilities of the kids, right? The slave owner asks you, "How's your son?" "Oh, he's weak, he's dumb, he's this," right? See all these negative things as a parent, right? So that the slave owner doesn't take your child. But then that child, they grow up thinking, "Oh, I'm weak, I'm dumb, I'm these things," right? And then that perpetuates, and then over and over again you have this, and then I'm oversimplifying. But then you also have this slave mentality, like where we think we have to ask permission to do everything. We need their approval for everything. So now you've got a whole culture where they've been told, you know, you're racist because you're white, right? They're giving speeches at United Nations meetings saying, you know, I grew up white privileged, I know it, you know, and you're only accepted in this world of, hatred, right? And this whole, like, where they're just constantly downplaying anything that they are. No one's allowed to be proud of anything. If you have any European background, you're not allowed to, be proud of being Irish or, you're not allowed to anymore. You're not allowed to have those feelings anymore, right? Because if you do, you're a white supremacist.
Well, I'm a pink supremacist.
The pinks.
Yeah, I'm a pink supremacist. It's only my shade of pink. That's it.
That exact shade.
It's only, in fact, it's so unique. It's only me.
Right. Oh, jeez. Yeah. So, but I think about this. I'm constantly looking for how do you undo programming that's that deep, and I'll have breakthroughs on a very small scale, but it's something that has to change.
Trump's got the answer. Money.
Yeah. Oh, really? That's Trump's answer? Yeah, I've been trying to bring that answer for a while.
Well,
hey, Trump, let us bring the money in there.
Because it's like this. If let's put it this way, it's more about like prosperity. If everyone is prosperous, number one, nobody's fighting. Who cares about your stupid opinion if everyone's busy, right, making money? If you don't have the ability to go out and make any money, then you have time to mess around and talk about these crazy ideas, right? Oh, we should make sure that all of the people that are criminals are never deported. I mean, how do you get to that point that you think that's a good idea?
It's interesting. I never ever really had an opinion on these things, but until I see how, for the longest time, I was like, I just think there was some part of that I was missing. Now that I see how corrupt it is, and how it's hard to fathom that there's a real agenda, a mission to actually hurt you.
Yeah.
It's not just in your head, right? It's not something we're making up because we're crazy conspiracy theorists, right?
They're actually out to get us.
And they hate us.
And they're actually out to get us.
Yes, and they actually are. And that's actually, they're disgusted that we have the nerve and audacity to stand up for ourselves. How dare we, as slaves, stand up to them as whatever they think they are? Now, they never want to admit that. But it's become so transparent at this point. What are they fighting for? The only thing, and everybody's supporting that, they really have to ask themselves, are you really part of that elite mentality that they're promoting? Or are you part of the garbage that they hate? Right? Because that's what it comes down to. And they're the ones that are garbage.
Right.
I shouldn't say that. I should be more benevolent, I guess, about it, but I don't know.
Well, everyone can slip. It's like, oops, yeah, I told you what I actually think about you.
Did I tell you the truth again? My bad. It's but it's funny. I think about this, people are so naturally forgiving and kind, and this is just true. I know people don't want to believe this, but this is true. If you knew someone would never hurt you again, right? No matter what they've done, if you knew they could never hurt you again, you knew that they had really, you could see it somehow. If there was a way to measure this, and you could see, oh my gosh, they've had a completely massive change, and they realized everything they were promoting and a part of, all this hate-filled rhetoric and all stuff. It was all wrong, and they see it, and they'll never do it again. People would just let it go.
Yeah, I think it's pretty evident of that with Roger Bernard, right, who was that Dutch banker that, kind of turned when they wanted him to do child sacrifice, and he went against them, right? And he's very soulful in his, speaking about it, right, and how upset he is about it. right? That he literally is in his own hell in thinking about it, right? So from that standpoint, when people are now like self-punishing themselves, right? That they've learned their lesson, right? Which is the point of prison, right? You're too dangerous to be around people, so you've got to be put into away from people. That's the purpose of prison, right? Until you can reform, until you can realize the error of your ways. So if that actually occurs, and you can feel it emotionally from someone, then yes, you're willing to basically, well, yes, you need to be punished, answer for your sins, but you're punishing yourself, which is part of where people can then leave an opening for them to be open to you, uh, you know your forgiveness of them. Let's put it that way.
Right.
So, but it has to be genuine, right? It can't be. Oh, yeah, I'm sorry. Let's move on.
And that's the thing that's so impossible to, it's like, at the end of the day, it's like, I trust them completely and absolutely. I forgive them. I'm not mad at them at all. They are scorpions and snakes, and I don't expect them to be anything but that.
Right.
As a matter of fact, it is on us individually and personally if we expect them to be more, right? Don't expect a scorpion to be a teddy bear, right? They're just not going to be.
Right.
If a python is laying next to you in bed, it's not because you befriended it. It's because it's sizing you up to eat you. Okay.
Yeah. It's how wide do I have to open my jaws to fit you in?
That's right. I mean, that is it's just true. So I look at all those the reality behind everything that we're constantly about. It's like it's okay. I'm not mad at you for being that. I just at the end of the day we're driven by different things. You want to control and kill. I want to be free, and I want others to be. And I don't see how I can be free if everybody's not free, right? If slavery is normal, right? Like I'm not coming over to your house if like you have a slave, right? It's like we just have a deferring. Like I can't feel comfortable with that, right?
What if it's like only on the weekends?
What do you say? Only what?
What if it's only on the weekends? My slave is only here on the weekends, so.
I just can't.
Yeah,
like,
you just
so
can't.
I
Can't.
I do this automatically, and I don't know if it's right or wrong, but it's just how I feel. I always say all of my business is personal, and I treat the people I work with like their family, because you know what I want to be able to trust them, right? So I want to treat them with the utmost dignity and respect because I need them to perform. I need them to have the same weight that I have on me, to feel the same way I do, to feel just as responsible for everybody else as I do, right? And I know if they felt that way, there's no one that can beat us. If I could transfer the way that I feel about people, I look at this. I look at the mother of my children, right? Who's been damaged by this, in many ways, disrupted very harshly, our whole life, right?
Right.
And if every child had a mother like my children have, you wouldn't even have one. In these like tomorrow, my daughter's got this party now. I'm diminished, right? Like I'm like I contribute everything I have, but it's never enough. I mean, we live in New York City, right? So it's like cost of living is horrendous, right?
Right.
So even when I give everything I have, every hustle, every side job I pick up along the way, while I'm trying to do all this other stuff, right? It's been a great, great loss to everything. It's taken all of our life savings, all this. But despite that, my 7-year-old tomorrow is her name is Charlotte. So her mom has got a whole 7th birthday party planned for her, right? With like a Willy Wonka theme, right?
Oh,
She took
cool.
the time over months in advance to make like just like the Willy Wonka chocolate bars, but it says Char Bar, for Charlotte. Like made her customized, candy bars and T-shirts and and did this all like scraped together everything she could to customize bags and to give her the best possible experience, right? And then this is knowing our kids, like we celebrate them the whole weekend on the weekend or when it's a birthday, right? And my kids are trained and they know, and like from me, I've always trained them like you make sure you are just as grateful for all that's being done. So even if they're not into the work their mom's doing, they just adore her for it because they know how much she's doing this to give them a better life. She just wants them to know how amazing they are, how much she loves them, right? And I'm like, if every child felt that, if we grew up with that as normal, war wouldn't exist.
Yeah.
Conflicts would be so meaningless, it wouldn't matter, right? But it's the disparaging discrepancy, not in wealth, in the demonstration of our love for our children, for each other, for our own lives. That is where the real wealth is. And when it comes down to that, that is why the deep state hates us so much, because we are so abundant, we are so wealthy, we are so dynamic. They don't know what to do with it because they've done everything to kill us. They've taken all the tools that they've told us were the most important thing, and we still continue to thrive. And that's why. Because we're so abundant with the source that everything in the universe is made from.
Yeah.
So it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter how long they try to be. They'll never win. It's impossible.
Yeah. The light keeps breaking through, and the truth is being shined. That's like so obvious why the impeachment was so important, to show the contrast, good versus evil, black versus white. But in the case of everyone wearing white, there was on the wrong side of history. All right, but this visual optics of what has been going on is so important, so that people can literally see. Now I know. That's why there's such big swings against us, and it isn't a Republican-Democrat thing. It's us versus them, and them being the ones who have to put on the special glasses and see, them say, obey, obey.
It's a love versus hate model, or love versus fear, whatever one, right?
Yeah.
Everything they do is to perpetuate fear, and it's decisions made out of fear. Everything we do, and this is the key to victory. Look, this is the key to longevity. If everything we do, right or wrong, by the way, is out of love, because of love, they inevitably it will overwhelm them. Because for us, it's effortless.
Yeah, the truth will win out through love. Even if you're going down the road and you're thinking one thing. The latest was, like I said, this thing with Obama, saying to the Russians, after my next election, I'll be more flexible. For me, it was always Locke's said, hey, that's proof that Obama is a bad guy, right? Now,
Right.
It's still the same thing. It's still proof he's a bad guy, but it may have been meant to basically divert attention, or saying the opposite. Right? He was really waging a war, right? Because this is Russia is the one that got rid of the central bank model, and since then they've been on the bad list. They've been on the naughty list, right? And they've been trying to upset them, destabilize them. And so no wonder Russia would try to interfere with the elections, and if that actually occurred, I don't know. I know that when they say that it actually occurred, it was something like $100,000 worth of paying people to post things in Facebook, something crazy, some small number like that. It was like insignificance, like it did nothing. It had nothing to do with what the real reason why they were, say, Russian hacking was because of the Julian Assange and Seth Rich, right? What was on the DNC server that proved uranium-1, right?
Right.
right? And that's why they said Russian hacking, Russian hacking, Russian hacking, Russian hacking, right? It's that Russians are hacking the elections. Don't look over here, look over there.
Yep.
Actually, I was going to talk about some of this to get started with, but we've already been going a while. Do you want to just end it here?
Yeah, no, I'm sorry. We had a great conversation before this, and I know we had a lot more things to talk about. But
Yeah.
that's good.
Yeah, I mean, we're already, what is this, an hour and a half or something? Yeah, hour and 15 minutes. So, but if we start this next topic, we'll be here another hour. So,
Yep.
So we'll just delay it till tomorrow. But do try and get that information to me I was asking for, and then we'll be back tomorrow. Hopefully, something would have happened.
Absolutely. Let's hope. All right, everybody. Have a great night. Dan, appreciate you. Thank you as always.
Appreciate you
Peace out
too.
from New York.
Peace out from the Philippines. Subscribe to the channel. Go ahead and share. Join us at wwg1wga.love. Subscribe for $11 a month, $8.88 a month, $9.99 a year, or any of the other amounts that are there. That all are welcome. Thank you for everything you've done, and until tomorrow.